Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Brought to you by Junk Be Gone and the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Paper Be Gone studios for the Sports Source. We're happy you joined us today. Much to talk about. Spring practice is underway. We're going to continue to pick the bones of the basketball season that just ended for Tennessee. And we'll start with a huge commitment for the Tennessee football program and a quick note about one of our own. So let's get right into our show. First segment today brought to you by the Garza Law Firm. When it comes to an attorney, it kind of makes sense to hire a local one, don't you think? Someone who knows the local system and the people in it. That's why out-of-town attorneys on TV, in their TV ads, they want you to think they're in Knoxville, not in Birmingham, not in Memphis. You just need to check on the website. If you think, oh, that's a good spot, I'm going to look at this guy, go to the bottom of the website and see if they're actually in Knoxville, because a lot of them aren't. You know who is? Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm have been for years. These are your neighbors right here in East Tennessee. They'll take good care of you. Whatever legal help you need, they provide it. The Garza Law Firm. Check out garzalaw.com. Okay, before we get going, I do want to say it's out there, social media, message boards, people have been calling and everything. Our buddy and compadre on the show, Will Overstreet, had an accident this weekend. He is okay in terms of life or death situation. Texted with him this morning. He's in good spirits, it seems. But it was a weird situation. I'm sure it's out there. So he and his son were out on a hiking trail apparently, and a tree, I'm assuming due to the high force winds, fell on him. So he wanted to send along thanks to the doctors, the EMTs, park rangers who helped him, his wife, who I know was going through a madhouse yesterday with all of this, his son, who was with him and who was thankfully not injured by all of this. And, you know, he's already in, like I say, he's in decent spirits because he said, well, look, it could have been a lot worse, like dead. So we think that Will's going to come through this okay. I'm sure there's going to be some recovery time, some recuperating time that goes with this, but I know so many of you out there have been thinking of him. He wanted to pass along thoughts to all of you and his thanks to all of you who've been praying for him and his family over the last 24 hours. So good news on a VFL and friend of mine, friend of the guys here on the show. So Will, we're thinking of you, buddy. All right. On with the show. This week, Tennessee received a commitment from California quarterback, 5-star Nico Iamaleava. And this is for your help as well as mine. Iamaleava, get used to it. Although we think everybody's just going to call
Looks like an eye test.
Yes. Iamaleava. Say it fast. Iamaleava. Nico Iamaleava, a 5-star quarterback prospect and a guy who Tennessee had made an absolute priority, simply sent shockwaves across the country. I mean, because this is a guy that typically you would be thinking would be Tennessee, would be Alabama, Georgia, that kind of guy, Oregon. Ohio State, but Tennessee grabs him. Ryan, Harrison Bailey was a 5-star in one service. Jarrett Garantano was the number 2 ranked dual threat quarterback in the country. This guy, however, is the highest ranked by 24/7 Sports, highest ranked Tennessee quarterback commitment since.
Really, since Peyton Manning, if you wanted to be maybe inclusive of all the rankings, but the 24/7 Sports composite goes back to 2000. That's as far back as the Internet archives go. There's no one in that time that is ranked as high as Nico Iamaleava among Tennessee's signees and commitments at the quarterback position. Their last 5-star was James Banks in 2002. So that tells you how long it's been since they got a quarterback.
You made a good receiver.
Even close to this caliber. Casey Clausen before that was also a 5-star. So only the third in the Internet era that was a 5-star in the 24/7 Sports composite. Just a huge pickup for that reason and so many others. But number 3 overall player in the country right now in 24/7 Sports rankings. We'll see where he ends up. But he's among a group of really special quarterbacks that Tennessee obviously is fortunate to land, even though he's ranked number 3 among that group behind Arch Manning, who's a household name, and Malachi Nelson, a 5-star USC commitment. Iamaleava has the highest upside, is what you continue to hear from everyone who's familiar with him, that he's got maybe the highest ceiling out of that group, and that's lofty praise. This is a special quarterback class, so even though he's number 3 in this class right now among those quarterbacks, there's a thought that you're getting a generational talent here, and that's obviously a big deal at the quarterback position.
You can say this about most of these 18-year-olds who are coming out of high school. Get him in the weight room because he looks like a stick
He's
at
lean.
this point, but he has an arm, and everyone is excited about the – I mean, the Tennessee fan base, look, they got excited about Harrison Bailey too. They got excited about Garantano too. But there is a different level of excitement because you knew you wanted this guy. And credit the fan base too, because part of the thing that pushed this over the top was him coming into a basketball game at Thompson Bowling, and the student section and the crowd just went nuts for him and chanted his name, and the family reacted to that one, Vince.
Yeah, they really resonated with his mom in the piece where he committed, had that in the video, his mom talking about how special it was to have the fans react that way. And, you know, I think in that 24/7 rankings, he's not only the top quarterback as far as they've been going back, but 5th overall player. Has a personality, has this thing where he wears pajamas to some of the camps and workouts because he didn't have a pair of sweats that were clean for workouts, so he just ran with it and it went well. He got a lot of feedback, so he continued. So he's a guy that not only has personality, but he has talent, and he fits that need. How long have Tennessee fans wanted that program-changing quarterback? And they've been dying for one, and this guy, with how high he is ranked, finally fits that, I think, in what they've been looking for.
The interesting thing is you've got a guy that's helped change your program overnight that no one expected in Hendon Hooker. They thought it was going to be Joe Milton. It was Hendon Hooker. You got it from a 3-star that Butch Jones flipped from Arizona State in Josh Dobbs. Mm-hmm. But this guy, those are exciting players. Those have made the offense better. This guy is supposed to be that generational deal, Bob.
Pre-excitement is what it is. I mean, you know, people got to kind of put it in context. You got a long wait before he gets here and before he's playing. But the excitement surrounding him, you know, it is so great that I just can't help but go back to some of the other guys that you and I have talked about for 20 years. No, for 20 years. We got him. And then he ends up playing for Chattanooga.
All right, let's get to that we'll get to that next time. David.
Yes.
All right, I got to go here. A few weeks ago, The Athletic, you did the story on Tennessee's collective. It shook the nation. America's sports fans were wowed by this. The fact that Tennessee's collective, Spire Sports, most people didn't know anything about a collective. The name collective still seems odd to me. Spire Sports told you that a UT quarterback could make 7 figures here. Okay, that everybody was like paying attention to that. It was a really good story. Again, national reporters like, wow, this is real that Tennessee's got this going. Well, a couple weeks ago, The Athletic had a story saying, we've gotten word, we can't tell you the school, we can't tell you the player, but we've gotten word that a certain collective has cut a deal for $8 million over 3 years with a certain kid in the 2023 class. Fast forward to this week, just a week after that story came out, Tennessee gets Nico Iamaleava.
There you go.
I'm going to pause.
You didn't hold up the sign.
I didn't hold up the sign. I'm sorry. That's why I paused. All right. I got to ask. You're not supposed to tell, I'm sure, but I have to ask. It was Tennessee and Nico, the deal that The Athletic was writing about?
I can't comment on any of that, but I can say, certainly, Tennessee has been ahead of the game on NIL and the collectives deal. I think when we wrote that story about the 2023 kid that got a bunch of money, I heard from a ton of coaches and agents in the time after sort of wondering, like, really? And, like, how do we do this? And how does this, like, what's going on here? And agents saying, I got clients blowing up my phone asking tons of questions about this. So, regardless of whether or not that's the particular situation or whatever, ultimately, Tennessee's been ahead of the game. I'm sure Nico has gotten a good package and all those things. And so, that's going to be a huge asset. And right now, everybody's trying to figure out what they're doing and get their pieces in place and all that. And the one thing about the Spire story that I wrote, a month or two ago is that Spire has their stuff together. They kind of know what they're doing. They have their funding. They have their sort of strategy. And everybody's trying to figure that out right now.
According to them. I mean, that's
according to them.
None of us, I'm not knocking you, and I'm certainly not questioning them, but this is such a new phenomenon. we're all kind of just taking people's word for it. I mean, to an extent, because they didn't open up their books for you.
They did not open up their books. In this
this
particular case, though, for the $8 million man, we did see the physical contract and what that actually looks like. There's some questions about that, but yeah.
Well, let me ask you guys this. We know he's going to get some kind of deal. All right, so Spire Sports is probably involved in something, whether he's the $8 million man or not. Is this a perfect example of how NIL is changing the game? Without NIL, do you think Tennessee lands this guy?
Tough question. I would lean toward no, but maybe. They'd have a better chance than they might have. I think one thing that people are overlooking in this is Tennessee seems to have not really gotten super involved in the Arch Manning sweepstakes. They zeroed in on Nico early and like, you're our guy.
Which was
all these other schools are waiting and seeing, well, what's Arch going to do? How are these dominoes going to fall? All this. Tennessee went hard after Nico, and that, I think, gave them a huge advantage, NIL or otherwise.
I think that was wise, too, because, look, I would rather go compete with Oregon for this kid than Alabama and Georgia for Arch Manning.
Well, that's one thing about this. Texas. Alabama and Georgia were in the race for Nico Iamaleava. The thing with that is, though, they were divided a little bit. Tennessee went all in. Part of that because Arch Manning didn't show a lot of interest early on. But it was a smart calculation on their part to say, hey, let's cut our losses, not worry about that, and focus on him. And he's been their top guy on the board for 10 months. And so Tennessee gets him. I think it's look, NIL was a factor in his recruitment, I think. I think that's safe to say. Tennessee, you see fans chanting your name, that's money potential. All that stuff at Tennessee adds up. So, sure, did he think about that? No doubt. But I think the football side of things, the way the family felt in Knoxville, all that stuff was a factor. And I think Tennessee deserves a lot of credit. And the NIL stuff shouldn't downplay what Tennessee did on the football side to win that battle.
Okay, I wasn't trying to downplay.
Yeah.
Alabama and Georgia, it's one thing to have them chasing you and you know that they really like this other guy. I'm kind of the fallback. If she won't go to the dance with me, will you go to the dance with me? Girls really don't like that typically, so I'm sure that Iamaleava preferred knowing that, hey, we want you to go with prom with us, period. We're not talking to Betty Lou over here. We're talking to you and you only.
I'm sure if you asked him, he'd probably say, I'm better than Malachi Nelson. I'm better than Arch Manning.
Sure.
So what? So that's the kind of guy
I
you
should
want
be
to
the
have.
guy you're after.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I don't think it's been discussed enough. We knew for months throughout his recruitment, one big thing was Nico wanted to play in the SEC. That always appealed to him. So when Alabama and Georgia were maybe divided in their pursuits of those two guys, Tennessee suddenly looks pretty good, and it came down to maybe Tennessee versus Oregon. That's a battle Tennessee can win because he liked the conference.
It's a big get, and you would think with the NIL money, depending on whether he's Mr. 8 million or not, whatever he's getting, you would think the NIL makes it a little bit safer, that you're not as worried that, okay, well, this is a commitment and commitments don't mean anything.
Right.
Well, now you've got other pieces of paper that go with this that do mean something. So, all right, when we come back, let's continue on this. Let's talk about coattails, the potential for coattails. Let's talk about Bob mentioned it. There have been some 5-stars that came here, and hey, we all remember, wow, Garantano committing in Broadway and the big Broadway lights and everything. Yeah, flop. Is this guy a lock? We'll discuss that. Come on back.